Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Days are breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Days are breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Days are breaking in my soul. Some have gone to heaven shouting. Have gone to heaven shouting. Some have gone to heaven shouting. Days are breaking
Your speed to drive safely, period.
Morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Bright morning stars are rising. Days are breaking in my soul.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North American Unitarian Association's February service. We are a member service organization dedicated to supporting and promoting the practice of liberal religion by embracing freedom, reason, and tolerance, rooted in our commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of every person and all people. Before we begin, I have a few announcements here. Big news, we have 10 existing organizational members, or have had 10, we now have 11. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Flint has joined us as a member organization, and we welcome them. We have a couple of discussion circles that are active. The Conversation Discussion Circle will be meeting on the 19th, and then again on March 5th, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock Pacific time. If you have questions about that circle or would like to participate, you can email circles@naunitarians.org. There's also the Forum Circle, which will be meeting February 23rd at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And again, if you want information on that, you can go to our website or email circles@naunitarians.org. The International Alliance Study Course, Mythology Then and Now, How Can It Inform Our Future, will be holding its third meeting on March 8th. It is the third meeting of 5, but you're still welcome to participate. I'm not sure about the connection if you'd like to register, but you can go to our website and find it under events, I believe. Well, book club will be meeting on February 27th at 4:30, and the book this month is A Guide for the Perplexed by E.F. Schumacher. And we have a new event coming up March 11th. The NAUA Academy is offering Faith in Film. It says here, March's Academy session is a tour of religious expressions, statements, or symbols in the genre of popular film, from It's a Wonderful Life to The Matrix. Religious in this context means any scene or dialogue that makes sweeping statements about the nature of the world and what it means to be human within it. Again, you can find information on our website. If you received the emailed announcements that came out the last couple days, there are also buttons to register for these events in those announcements. And I understand that those announcements will be coming out 2 times a month. And you can get on the mailing list for those if you're not already on. You can email info@naunitarians.org. So for this month, we are honored to welcome JD Stillwater to our virtual pulpit. JD, a graduate of Cornell University, is a science ambassador and author who writes and speaks about profound insights from natural reality, insights that drive paradigm shifts and cultural awakening. This work springs from his love of science and his gift for making difficult concepts graspable for non-scientists. JD is an officer of the Religious Naturalist Association, a global community of people who take nature to heart. He serves on the governing council of the Institute on Religion in an Age of Science, and he's a fellow of Sinai and Synapses, a select interfaith group of clergy, scientists, and writers who are committed to bridging the religious and scientific worlds, offering people a worldview that's scientifically grounded and spiritually uplifting. JD, welcome. Would you like to light the chalice?
Yes, thank you, Lorraine. Let this small flame remind us that the fires of faith rise everywhere into the same sky. The songs are many and different. The dances are many and varied. The match, the kindling, the fuel, the flames, the sheltering chalice, infinitely diverse and ever-changing, but all rise into the same welcoming sky, filled with the radiant stars of a creative cosmos.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, my friends, we can make reach out to me. With all of our voices and all of our visions, with friends we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
I'm going to let Walter Cronkite open our service today. Something he said decades ago. Just listen to this. He said, quote, "It seems to rise again when the crisis times come. And this is a time of most severe crisis, as we all know, not just for the history of the United States and the survival indeed of our democracy, but for the future peace of the world. And never before, probably, has the need for interfaith commitment been nearly as great as it is at this very moment." End quote. Walter Cronkite. Our time for all ages today is the magnificent redbud tree, a Jataka tale from India. Have you ever known something, known it really well, and been certain that you were absolutely right? Well, you're not the first. Once there were 4 princes, brothers, who had heard stories about a magnificent redbud tree, more marvelous than any other tree. They all wanted to see it, and they all wanted to be the first. Well, late one winter, the eldest brother found an opportunity. He was alone in the chariot with a driver when suddenly he thought, today's the day. And so he asked the driver, please, will you bring me into the forest to see the redbud tree? The driver gasped a little. It was a long and dangerous journey, and yet he understood the boy's desire, and so he agreed. Soon they were winding their way along the narrow, winding track, deeper and deeper into the forest. The chariot stopped. The boy got out. He saw the one tree that was different from all the others in the forest canopy. But the prince was so stunned and disappointed by what he saw that he didn't say a word, not in the forest nor when he got home. Had his brothers been more observant, they might have noticed a certain sadness in his demeanor. A few months later, the second prince found his chance. He was alone in the chariot with the driver and said, could we take a detour to see the redbud tree? The driver gasped again. The journey was no less long or dangerous than it had been with the first prince. And yet, he had brought the first boy there, so he agreed again. Soon they were winding their way along that narrow, winding track, deeper and deeper into the forest. The chariot stopped. The boy got out and soon recognized the one tree that was different from all the others in the forest canopy. He was so awed by what he saw that he was speechless. He couldn't sort out what to say, and so he didn't say a thing. Had his brothers been more observant, they might have noticed a quiet joyfulness in his demeanor. Another few months went by when the third prince had his chance. You know what happened. He was alone in the chariot with the driver, and he said, could we take a detour and see the redbud tree? The driver sighed. The journey was so dangerous, and yet it wouldn't be fair not to give the third brother a chance. And so he agreed. Soon they were winding their way along the narrow, winding track, deeper and deeper into the forest. The chariot stopped. The boy got out and soon recognized the one tree that was different from all the others in the forest canopy. He was so horribly startled by what he saw that he too could not speak, nor did he ask any questions. Again, the other brothers heard nothing of his experience. Had his brothers been more observant, they might have noticed bitterness in his demeanor. Another few months went by before the fourth, the youngest prince, finally had his chance. And you know what happened. He was alone in the chariot with the driver, and he said, could we take a detour and see the redbud tree? The driver sighed, not again. And yet, how could he deny the last brother this opportunity? Soon, as you know, they were winding their way along the narrow, winding track, deeper and deeper into the forest. The chariot stopped. The boy got out and soon recognized the one tree that was different from all the others in the forest canopy. He was so startled by what he saw that he couldn't stop laughing. He laughed and laughed all the way home. Of course, his brothers wanted to know what he was laughing about, and he told them. That redbud tree has the most ridiculous name. There were no red buds, just black beans hanging down from the branches. It should be called the bean tree. No, you're wrong, said the eldest brother. It was so desolate with just a bare trunk and bare branches. It should be called the dead tree. Wait a minute, said the third brother. It had leaves. They looked just like spinach. Yuck, it should be called the dread tree. Are you blind? Asked the second brother. The magenta blossoms are like the sunrise. That whole tree was ablaze with them. It truly is a magnificent redbud tree. Well, the young princes fell into a fierce argument, each prince as adamant as the others that he and only he knew the truth. I'm right. Don't be ridiculous. I'm right. No, 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 I'm right. The king and the chariot driver smiled to themselves. They knew, and you do too, that each of them had seen the redbud tree, but in a different season. Now, if only those princes would stop and listen, if only they'd stop and think, then they would agree that they had all seen the redbud tree. They might even agree that it truly is magnificent in each of its seasons, each in its own way. Thank you for listening to the story of the magnificent redbud tree.
That story is a hard act to follow. The following words here are from John Burroughs, the American naturalist and essayist. For my part, I do not have to take my faith in out of the wet and the cold. It is an open-air faith, an all-the-year-round faith. Neither killing frost nor killing heat disturb it. Not tomatoes, not tornadoes, progressive lenses. Not tornadoes, nor earthquakes, nor wars, nor pestilence, nor famine makes me doubt for one moment that the universe is sound and good. The forces which brought us here and provided so lavishly for our sustenance and enjoyment, that gave us our bodies and our minds, that endowed us with such powers, that surrounded us with such beauty and sublimity, that brought us safely through the long and hazardous journey of evolution, that gave us the summer sun, the midnight skies, and the revolving seasons, that gave human love and fellowship and cooperation, childhood, motherhood and fatherhood, and the sense of justice and mercy, are beneficent and permanent forces. They're directed to me personally because they're directed to all that live. They're the cause of the living, the essence and the sum of all life of the globe. I do not mind if you call them terrestrial forces. The terrestrial and the celestial are one. I do not mind if you call them material forces. The material and the spiritual are inseparable. I do not mind if you call this view the infidelity or atheism of science. Science too is divine. All knowledge is knowledge of God.
It's really a privilege to be here today. One of the things I love about UUs is that we try to reach across theological differences. We're not perfect at it, of course, but we do successfully spend Sunday mornings in religious community together, even with quite different beliefs. Saturdays too, apparently. And it's not just us, people of goodwill all over the world do their best to reach across theological and scriptural divides. But what if there were no scriptural divides? Or, in other words, what if there were a common scripture that was shared by all religions? The dictionary definition of scripture is really short. Religious writings regarded as holy or sacred. And our UU tradition has many sources. But are they sacred to us? Pagan priestess Starhawk once wrote that something is sacred when there is no end, no goal that would justify its destruction or desecration. And I think that suggests that sacred texts describe things or ideas that must be protected, revered, cherished. Well, a couple summers ago, I learned about a podcast called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. So this Harvard divinity student named Vanessa Zoltan began studying Jane Eyre as though it were a sacred scripture, just to see what spiritual meaning she might be able to glean from it. And she and her professor were astounded at how beneficial that was. And the effort grew into a study group. And at some point along the line, somebody suggested that they use books people actually like. So they started studying the Harry Potter books as though they were sacred texts. And over time, it grew into a podcast. And now, 10 years later, 16 million people have benefited spiritually from studying the Harry Potter books as though they were scripture. And that's in spite of J.K. Rowling's dismaying transphobia and anti-Semitism. And their point is not that Harry Potter is a sacred text. It isn't. They chose it because it's well known and because there's a lot going on in the plot. I mention it because I think if this can work with Harry Potter, of all things, I think it could work with almost any text. And what they're doing is exegesis, which means interpretation of a text, especially sacred texts. And Vanessa and her team say in big, bold type on their website, we believe that in treating texts as sacred, we can learn to treat one another as sacred. And they emphasize that this works. With Harry Potter, remember, it works because of three things: trust, rigor, and community. Trust that the text can yield generous rewards. Rigor, well, here's how they put it. They say, the text in and of itself is not sacred, but is made so through our rigorous engagement with it, end quote. And then community, in that it takes a village to be uplifted together, to make holy meaningfulness from a text studied in community. Well, if millions of people can extract spiritual enrichment from studying the Harry Potter books, then I think if we had a global text that was regarded as sacred, what miracles could arise from interfaith study of it, especially if we studied it with trust, rigor, and in community? I think the world might be very different. If we had a common scripture, different people would probably make different meanings from it, and that's okay. As you know, the billions of people who study the Hebrew book of Genesis have all kinds of different takes on, for example, the role of women. So clearly the same text can sometimes yield vastly different interpretations. Common scripture doesn't necessarily prevent misuse of it either, or guarantee religious reconciliation, but it might help. At the very least, we could have some shared holidays, and we would have a common language for addressing challenges, from personal challenges to global crises. At heart, religious scriptures are about spiritual experience. And when I ask people to share their spiritual experiences, almost always they describe something that happened in a natural or a wilderness setting, or an experience that was deeply connected with something or someone outside themselves, or sometimes both, connective experience in nature. Well, here's the big reveal. We do have a common global scripture, and you've been living and worshiping in its pages your whole life, perhaps never really considering its spiritual potential, its sacred depths. It is tremendously rich in theological content. Our common scripture I'm talking about here is nature, natural physical reality, a vast cosmos we now know to be at least 47 billion light years across, a universe that includes all of us on Earth, along with uncountable other Earths. Did you know that there are more solar systems in the visible universe than there are grains of sand on Earth? There are more solar systems in the universe than grains of sand on Earth. I think I might have been off by one slide. Here are my pictures of the just unbelievable numbers of sand grains on this planet. Astronomer Neil deGrasse Tyson says, we are a speck on a speck on a speck on a speck. Really, really small. And one of those pictures that just flew by, this one, is a photograph of Earth taken by Voyager 1 from beyond the orbit of Neptune. Your entire life, all of human history, all of evolution took place on that tiny speck. Carl Sagan described it as a pale blue dot suspended in a sunbeam. A speck. Imagine if your own holy scripture, whatever that is, imagine if it contained a sentence like this one. The sun is a fire bigger than 1,000,000 earths, and there are more suns in the heavens than grains of sand on earth. What meaning would you make of that as you studied it? How does it feel to contemplate that? Now imagine that that isn't just a sentence in a book recorded by some revered prophet long ago, but a present-day reality you can see with your own eyes. Imagine that anyone can see it and engage with you about what it means to them, how they feel knowing it. How do you feel knowing this? A lot of people say it makes them feel really small, really insignificant. And it is humbling. I think a bit of humility might be just what we need at this time in history. On the other hand, as far as we know, the only complex life in the entire universe is here on Earth. 2 trillion galaxies of stars, and this tiny dot of a planet may have the only eyes, the only hearts, the only love, the only minds to appreciate it all. So, are you a speck, or are you precious beyond measure? Science just describes, and in that regard, science is a text. It doesn't tell us what it means, doesn't tell us what to make of it. Science concerns itself with what is. It's up to each of us to determine what it means. And human beings are hardwired for making meaning. We can't really avoid it, even if we wanted to. We think in metaphors and analogies. So, am I a mere speck, or precious in thy sight, if you will? I say both. For me, being both minuscule and precious instills a kind of durable humility, along with a sense of responsibility. It says, I'm not in control here, and what I do really matters. I'm a terribly small part of something incomprehensibly vast, and nevertheless an essential part. Richard Louv says, all spiritual life begins with a sense of wonder. I've spent many years now collecting and cataloging awe-inspiring wonders of natural reality. I call them the revelations because they get revealed as scientists do their work. Revelations like the number of stars out there. And when I meditate on science revelations like this and try to interpret them like the chapters of a religious text, I see patterns that offer to help heal a wounded society on a critically ill planet. And I call those the insights. And I want to just skim through 3 of them today. First, let me say that what I'm about to share is partly science and partly exegesis. It's interpretive meaning making from the findings of science. Somebody else might look at the same science knowledge and interpret it differently. And that's fine. That's how it works. First one, unity. Evolution, bolstered by multiple lines of genetic evidence, tells us that there's only one family of people on this planet. Do we treat each other like family? With multiple wars raging, we know the answer to that. How do we greet a cousin we've never met that turns up at a family reunion? And of course, I'm not just talking about people who are easy to know and get along with. I'm talking about the panhandler I ignored yesterday, and the guy who cut me off on the road. People with unfamiliar ways and world leaders that I regard as evil. Those are my cousins too. And this knowledge doesn't thrill me. It's not all sweetness and light. I don't like that the water I drink has been part of people who do awful things too. Revelations are not always comfortable, and that's true of most sacred scriptures, right? Discomfort is part of the spiritual journey. Our choice is to face the truth of it or live in some kind of superficial denial of reality. All humans are cousins. Every conflict is a family conflict. Every war is a civil war. Recognizing this for me has been profoundly meaningful. And this kinship goes far beyond our human cousins. The tree of life is a family tree with branches for every living thing on this planet. Every living thing is a cousin of mine. And we're embedded in Earth's cycles, part of the water cycle, the carbon cycle, and so on. That's the science. And until recently, I used the word interdependence for this, as in the interdependent web of existence. But it's never felt fully adequate to me, because we are not separate objects that depend on trading materials and energy with other objects. We are integral elements of a larger whole. And so a few years ago, I learned the word interbeing as used by the Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh. I think interbeing fits better. I'm not a distinct but interdependent object. I exist as an integral interbeing within and as a living planet. And interbeing extends beyond Earth too. Every atom on Earth came from somewhere, and now we know where. All the atoms heavier than hydrogen and helium were forged inside the furnaces of exploding supernova stars. Stars that make all those other elements out of hydrogen and helium. Remember, this is the origins of our bodies I'm talking about. Did you know that the main elements in our body are in the same order of abundance as elements in the universe as a whole? Except for helium and neon. Those two don't play well with others, and they're extremely rare here on Earth. I want to show you a short clip about this.
I know that the molecules in my body are traceable to phenomenon in the cosmos. And it's our 15 pounds of gray matter that figured this out. There's a kinship with the cosmos that resonates deeply with New Age thinking, but I'm not apologetic about that. It's what we find. If whatever we find resonates with whoever, go ahead, take it. And when I reflect on our kinship with the cosmos, when I do the calculation that shows that a 15-ton meteorite that we have in the center of the Rose Center for Earth and Space, it's an iron meteorite. When I do the calculation that shows that if you take all of the iron from the hemoglobin of the people in the tri-state area of New York City, you can recover that much iron out of their blood, and realize that the iron from that meteorite and the iron from your blood has common origin in the core of a star. Tell me what part of my brain is lighting up, because that excites me. That makes me want to grab people in the street and say, have you heard this?
My body is a microcosm of the cosmos. Kind of like a cell, a single cell in my body is a microcosm of me. I'm a reflection of the whole, acting within the whole, for the whole. Going back further, we now also know where those first atoms of hydrogen and helium came from. They came from light. Those first atoms condensed out of intense light energy at the beginning of time in a process called Big Bang nucleosynthesis. Gravity collected those early atoms together to make the first stars, which then exploded to make heavy atoms, which gravity collected again to make planets. Now, taken in context with lots of other passages from the scripture of nature, to me, this means that my family tree goes all the way back to the dawn of time, and I am interbeing with everything in the universe. We are the universe, come alive, in a state of total unity with all of it. Cooperation. When I was a child, my parents were Shackley distributors, which meant that for us kids, a treat was a Shackley energy bar. And believe me, these things were nothing like candy. And one day I noticed that a colony of ants were eating an energy bar that had fallen unnoticed under a radiator. And to their credit, my parents treated it as a science project and just let the ants eat. Well, those ants were fascinating to me as a boy, and I spent hours on my belly watching them day after day, noticing how they walked in these thin lines, almost like highways, complete with passing lanes, and how they would touch antennae with each other as they passed. Well, within a few weeks, the ants had carried off that entire bar, one tiny mouthful at a time. Why am I telling you this? Well, survival of the fittest does not mean survival of the strongest or fastest or smartest. The fittest means those who are best aligned with their environment, and environments change. So fittest means different things in different times, in different places. And in the 3.5 billion years of life on this planet, survival of the fittest has most often meant survival of the most cooperative. There is competition between individuals and between species, but survival is often a team sport. So cooperators almost always have an advantage. The worker ants moving gnat cricket are sterile. They have no chance of having baby ants of their own. They're working to support their sisters and nieces who will. Cooperation is the essence of every major advance in the complexity of life on Earth. Fossil record consistently reflects greater and greater scales of cooperation building up in layers of biological complexity. Living things cooperate in larger and larger assemblies, and that then allows new potentials, new qualities to emerge. And all of this only happens if there's diversity. No evolutionary change can happen in a population if its members are all clones of each other. When there's diversity, natural selection has something to work with, promoting alignment with the environment and hindering misalignment. And it's important to mention here that natural selection works on populations, not individuals. The darker colored moth is just as likely to get eaten by a bat when these two are flying. So the lesson here is not that some individuals are better than others. It's that diverse populations have more survival options, kind of like a football team that's proficient in more plays or a musical group with a larger repertoire. And this is true of cultural evolution too. If we all spoke the same language or worshiped the same way, ate the same foods, we would all be far less adaptable as the world changes around us. So diversity is a prerequisite for resilience. Natural reality, as science reveals it to us, could be a source of great unity between the world's faith traditions. The work of science is done by representatives from all those major faith traditions from all over the planet. And they share their process and their findings globally for all humanity to take inspiration from. More than nations or religious organizations or NGOs, science is people from every culture and every nation and faith working together to reveal nature's secrets. And you know, the culture wars urge us to think of science as some kind of enemy of religion and spirituality, claiming that science reduces all magic and mystery to the mundane mud of materialism. Well, I got to tell you, the last 150 years in science have done just the opposite. Every discovery, every dark frontier illuminated, reveals even greater mysteries beyond the shores of our knowledge. With each new discovery, nature's glory and intricacy grow, sometimes by leaps and bounds. And in me, they inspire an ever-expanding awe of the creative forces that birthed all this. So it's tempting to say, science is awesome, but it's nature that's awesome. Science just reveals it to us. Science brings us revelations that could serve as a global interfaith scripture on the handiwork of ultimate source, however we perceive that. If the world's religions want to work together for the sake of future generations, they should start on common ground. Natural reality is the only literal common ground we have. And here we are, living in it, as it. It's true that sometimes new discoveries make us reconsider our beliefs in a new and more expansive light. And that's a spiritual practice too. For me, it's had powerful implications for who I am and what's important to me. I think it could have powerful implications for others too, as well as for interfaith dialogue. For example, how does the kinship of all living things resonate, similarly or differently, for Hindus and Muslims, for Jews and Taoists, for Jains and Christians, for Mormons and pagans and atheists? What could they learn from one another once they go deeper than polite appreciation? Well, the fact of this kinship is something we all share because we are it. We are that kinship. I think it's a solid ground for supporting deep and authentic interfaith dialogue. And kinship is just one chapter of science's vast available scripture. When something is sacred, nothing can justify its destruction or desecration. The text in and of itself is not sacred, but is made so through our rigorous engagement with it. We believe that in treating texts as sacred, we can learn to treat one another as sacred. Nature is a sacred text, and sacred texts describe things that must be protected, revered, cherished. Approached with trust that studying nature can yield spiritual rewards, with rigorous, earnest engagement to make it sacred, and doing so in community, local and global interfaith communities, natural reality, as science reveals it to us, could be the biggest, widest, most inviting bridge between faiths ever proposed. When we treat nature as sacred, knowing that our bodies are one with the whole of creation, we might just come to treat one another as sacred too. Sacred elements of a sacred planet, minuscule and precious in a vast and glorious cosmos. May it be so, and blessed be.
My life goes on in endless song of lover's lamentation. I hear the real bar of him that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife,
As we go, lifted up by our highest hopes for a world of kinship and cooperation, a world of unity within diversity, let us each embrace our small role in bridging the world's faith. Let us work with others to make meaning of this magnificent red bud universe we all share. Go in peace, go in love, go together.
All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands, applause, or anything they got now. Listen to the top where the little bird sings, where the melody, where the high notes ring it, and the loud owl cries over everything, and the blackbird disagrees. Singing in the nighttime, singing in the day, when the little duck quacks and he's on his way, and the otter island's got much to say, and the porcupine talks to himself. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire, and some just clap their hands, applause, or anything they got now. The dogs and the cats, they take up the middle, while the honeybee hums and the cricket fills, and the donkey brays and the pony neighs, and the old gray badger sighs. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire, and some just clap their hands, applause, or anything they got now. It's a simple song, a little song everywhere, by the ox and the fox and the grizzly bear, and the dopey alligator and the hog dog, and the sly old weasel and the turtle dove. Everybody! All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands. One more time! They got now. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands, applause, or anything they got now.
Oh, JD, thank you. That was a wonderful service. I'm sure that your talk has sparked a lot of ideas and questions among us. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of going directly to the breakout rooms, which we will have in a few minutes, we're going to open up the floor now for discussion. If you have a question or a comment for JD, please raise your hand, digital or otherwise, and someone will call on you.
Hello, can I
Yeah.
speak? Yeah. JD, your talk or sermon or whatever, it was salve to my soul. It filled in a lot of holes about science and religion and evolution, etc. So I just thank you. That's all. Nothing deep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the comment.
Well, I'd sure like to thank you, JD. That was a great service, and opened up a lot of different perspectives for me to look at the world as I go on my morning walks. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
The Religious Naturalist Association has a challenge out on social media, challenging people to go for a walk, just a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes a day, and just be fully mindful out whatever nature you can access where you are.
Bob?
Yeah, JD, thank you so much. It really is question that I've had sort of in my mind since I can remember, that there isn't really this conflict between religion and science. I think it's hard concept for people to grasp growing up in this society where science seems to be all and religion seems to be promising all but doesn't have anything to deliver. I see now that they are really the same thing, and there is no conflict between them, and it gives me a sense of peace. So I thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. My Bible, JD, is the essays and works of Annie Dillard. And I would assume that you have read her work, and you're talking her talk for sure. Robin Williams had a line in one of his stand-up routines. Don't remember the context anymore, but the line was, reality, what a concept. And I love that line. Whenever I want to move out of my daily routine and my daily life and remind myself of the bigger picture, I use that line. Just the fact that there is a reality, that there is something, that there is anything, and that there is enough to do it. That's just so wonderful service. Thank you.
Thank you.